Hello, readers! I'm so excited about this next book because I just finished it. It's Ali Wong, Dear Girls. And one of my goals this year is to start reading more authors of color. I'm usually not very intentional on books that I pick. It's usually just things that I'm interested in, or I hear the plot or the summary sounds good. So those are books that I read. I don't really pay attention to race, gender, ethnicity, anything like that. I just pick what I think is going to sound interesting. So I first heard of Ali Wong when she was on the Ellen show a couple months ago, actually promoting the book. And she has done 2 stand-up specials on Netflix, and she also has a movie on Netflix called Always Be My Baby. And I actually had watched the movie on Netflix, but I didn't realize who she was at the time. So she also was a writer for Fresh Off the Boat for I think 3 seasons, but I don't watch that show either, so I didn't know who she was. So I saw her on Ellen and I was like, oh, this girl's kind of cool. She's funny, but she's not one of those stand-up comedians that pushes her comedy on you when you're just watching her when she's doing an interview. So that's what I really liked about her, and I like her cadence and how she talks. So I was like, oh, I want to check this book out. So I put it on my list, but I didn't do anything with it. I was reading other things and it was just there so I could get it eventually. So I ended up watching her 2 comedy specials, and she's very raunchy. She's very in your face and very blunt about things. And I'm not someone that watches stand-up comedy, so I thought it was funny, but there are some things I'm like, I don't need to know that this is happening with another person. I don't even need to acknowledge that that is happening to you. So I said, I thought she was funny, and her delivery is funny. So I was excited to read her book. Like I said, she is very in your face. She's very blunt, and a lot of her jokes are about herself or about her husband. So she talks a lot. She has 2 young girls, so she talks a lot about motherhood and the process of giving birth and things of that nature, what happens to your body and what your body goes through and all that stuff. So I couldn't relate to any of that, but it honestly made me not want to have kids. But that's her, and that's her comedy, so that's fine. She also talks a lot about past relationships and things that have happened, and just poking fun at everyone and herself. And she talks about how she has slept with a bunch of people, some of them being homeless, some of them being, whatever. She lived in Vietnam for a semester. Her mother is Vietnamese and her father's Chinese. So growing up, the male in the house was dominant, and so they did a lot of Chinese traditions and did a lot of things according to her father. So she wanted to learn more about her mother's life, and her mother grew up in Vietnam, so she went over there for a semester and studied and toured the country and just lived. So I really thought when she's talking about her Asian parts, I thought that was very interesting because it's something that I can't relate to. So I thought that I learned a lot from that stuff. She also talks about doing ayahuasca a couple different times. One time she did it after her father died, and another time after she had miscarried her first pregnancy. So she talks a lot about very personal issues. I could not put the book down. I thought it was so good. The first couple chapters, like I said, are really raunchy and more of her comedic side. But then after you get past that, it's more of sweet stuff. So it's still funny, it's still in your face, but the message behind it is very sweet. So the whole point was, when her father had passed away, he had written her a letter called Dear Alexandra, and just talked about things that, he wished for her and whatnot, and some things that he had gone through in his life, but they had never actually talked about. So reading that letter, she really wanted to learn more about her father and the things that he went through because he grew up really poor. And his parents were immigrants over from China. So it really made her want to learn more about her family. So she thought it would be a good idea to write this book for her daughters. So every chapter starts out with Dear Girls, and she talks, I mean, they're not gonna be able to read this till they're like 30 years old, if that, because she talks a lot about sex and drugs and all things that you don't want to talk with your kids about. But like I said, there's a lot of hidden messages, good messages, in the stories and things like that. She talks about being an Asian American and her family giving her the exposure. She went to private school, so she was with a lot of white people all the time, but they still gave her exposure to what it was like to be in Chinatown and hang out with people of her own culture and things like that. So she wants that for her daughters. And her husband is Filipino and Chinese. So they have, I mean, he's also trying to do the same thing. It was really sweet because she makes a lot of jokes about him, like in her stand-up and in her book, and it's really funny. Like, he takes a brunt of a lot of jokes, but the very last chapter, it's called The Afterwards, not even a chapter, is a letter from him to the girls, and just talking about some of the similar things, but how he's kind of taken a back seat. He pretty much gave up his career because now he's like the stay-at-home dad, because of course she's making way more money than him. So just talks about how he never thought that he would be the stay-at-home dad and be the caretaker, but especially growing up in the household that he did, because the man always provided. So I thought it was very interesting. It's very sweet. I want to watch her movie again and maybe her stand-up again, just because it's just I have a different perspective on her now. But I thought it was really good. I would definitely recommend it if you want something to just kind of relax to. It's not something super serious. Like I said, it's funny, but there's also a lot of good stuff in there too. All right, so here it is. Let me know if you guys end up reading it and what you think. And if you have any other suggestions, just drop a comment below, and then maybe we can talk about it.